Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We're so happy to have you here.
Hey, Anne, this is Colleen. Can you hear me or see me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're going to give participants a couple of minutes to come in, and we'll get started at about 3:03 officially. So those
Great.
of you who are here, welcome. We're so happy to have you here with us today. Feels very quiet. Maybe we should have musical nature sounds playing as a welcome. Welcome to those of you joining us. We're going to get started in about 1 minute, just giving folks a chance to join us. So happy to have you here today to learn about our Nature Everywhere Community's opportunity. I think I'll go ahead and get started. I don't see anyone else entering the waiting room. Welcome, everyone. Hello, my name is Ann Muller. I am a project manager supporting Nature Everywhere at the Children in Nature Network. I'm really glad that you all are here with us today. Welcome to our information session to learn more about the opportunity and application process for Nature Everywhere Accelerator Communities, with a focus on addressing climate resiliency through green schoolyards and early childhood. And AJ, if you'll go one more slide. Thank you. I wanted to start by respectfully acknowledging that I am joining you today from the land of the Pawtucket people who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. We invite you to share the Indigenous land history of your location in the chat. If you're not familiar with the history of your location, you can learn about Indigenous territories and land with Native Land Map, which has been dropped into the chat for you. And in addition to land acknowledgements, here are some ways that you can support Indigenous peoples every day by learning about whose Indigenous homelands you're on and normalizing land acknowledgements in your work, educating yourself on Indigenous issues, amplifying Indigenous social media accounts to reshare and amplify Indigenous voices year-round, and support Indigenous causes and businesses. We're here today to talk about our Nature Everywhere initiative, and Nature Everywhere Communities is a partnership between the Children in Nature Network, Kaboom, and the National League of Cities that builds on what we've learned over the past 9 years of providing technical assistance, training, resources, and grants to more than 50 US cities throughout our Cities Connecting Children to Nature initiative. This new Nature Everywhere initiative seeks to address the intersections of nature equity, play equity, and climate resiliency in advancing equitable access to nature everywhere children live, learn, and play, with a focus on green schoolyards and early childhood strategies. Our bold vision by 2025 is to advance nature everywhere in 100 communities with a commitment and intent to support community teams in developing citywide nature everywhere visions and implementation plans using a systems change approach. And that's what we're here together today to talk about is your role in potentially becoming one of our 100 communities that we are supporting. I am excited to introduce our speakers that will be joining me today. You can go to the next slide. Priya Cook, the Director of Green Schoolyards and Communities here at the Children in Nature Network, and Vera Feeney, our Senior Program Specialist for Children in Nature at the National League of Cities. So welcome, Priya and Vera. We're so happy to have you joining us today. And I am going to hand it over to Priya to talk about our technical assistance opportunity.
Thanks, Anne. Hi, everyone. It's nice to know you're all out there and see some new and familiar names popping up in the chat. And it's great to hear from you if you're still adding where you're joining us today and a little bit about yourself. That's terrific. I will jump in by talking a little bit about the technical assistance opportunity that brings you here today. And if AJ, if you don't mind going ahead to the next slide, we can just start with, first of all, what is technical assistance? That can mean a lot of things in a lot of different contexts. And in the context of the Nature Everywhere initiative, this is in-person and remote consultation that supports the engagement of your city, district, and agency leaders, stakeholder engagement, community engagement planning, action planning, assessment, and overall capacity building around really specific and relevant strategy topics in the context of, what this initiative, how this initiative uses technical assistance and what format and medium that takes. It's listed here on the slide, but I'll walk you through it. This opportunity for selected sites will start with a 2-day vision lab in person in Milwaukee. And this is the kickoff of technical assistance. The costs are covered for teams who are attending. And it's a time to be together, get immersed, get excited and inspired, and to begin action planning. Going forward from that, during this 12-month period, there'll be recurring team calls with technical assistance consultants. Often we start with a more frequent, higher frequency of calls at the beginning, and then we can kind of adjust as we go and potentially see what format works best for the team and for our staff as we onboard new cohorts. And there's often a lot of interaction in between those standing calls. So our TA leads are here to support teams, and it's really common to have a lot of side meetings and strategizing and planning to make that support really robust for you. In addition, there's spaces where the cohorts come and the different community teams come together for peer learning and workshops around either common topics, both to learn from one another, learn from experts in the field, and also to share examples and expertise that you bring into the space. Each team that's participating has the opportunity to have a roughly 1.5-day technical assistance visit in person. So that's where our staff team will come to you and use that, kind of leverage that time to do things like engaging your city and school district and early childhood leadership, and potentially have larger stakeholder engagement in meetings and do some in-person work, which is always a nice treat after doing the bulk of this remotely. And then finally, the technical assistance opportunity does include access to supportive seed and catalytic funds. So at the beginning of the initiative, all selected teams have access to $40,000 of seed funding that is really intended to add capacity to the team. As you can imagine, the kinds of activities I'm talking about require a lot of coordination. And so that seed money is meant to support that coordination work. And then later, there's an opportunity to apply for catalytic funds to work on your implementation. What makes this particular cohort unique, I wanted to spend a moment on that, is the fact that communities across the globe are tackling climate issues such as extreme heat, poor air quality, flooding, stormwater runoff, habitat loss, pollinator decline, and inequitable distribution of fresh and nutritious food. Green schoolyards and early childhood play spaces are not a panacea for those issues, but they are prime locations for multiplying the impact of many of the solutions for those issues. They are a place where children, families, and communities already spend much of their time. And we know that the nature connection strategies we're here to talk about can be venues that align really well with those resilience goals. So here on this slide, you just see a few of the examples that feature prominently in this work. A lot of communities battling extreme heat are using, and in many cases, federal funding to address urban and community forestry goals. They're tackling stormwater management in places where there's flooding or poor water quality due to, excessively paved surfaces. And they're using, pollinator gardens, wildlife gardens, edible gardens to address everything from habitat to nutrition. The goals of our technical assistance are really embedded within our overall goal of equitable connection to nature everywhere kids live, learn, and play. In terms of the way we want to support you with that goal, that looks a lot like supporting you in aligning policies, funding, and infrastructure to support equitable access to nature on schoolyards and in early childcare settings, to engage cross-sector leadership and community co-creation that can help advance a shared vision in your community, and to create and begin implementation of an action plan that tackles system-level change and advances kids' nature connection and climate resilience. What makes a team a great fit for technical assistance really mirrors the goals I just covered. So having a team that has the engagement of institutional leaders and decision makers is critical, because then those team members have the support and the ability to commit their time and resources and ultimately align systems to do this work. A cross-sector team is really important because these are multi-solving strategies that we're looking at. Expertise across fields like climate resilience, district facilities and curriculum, early childcare, public health, stormwater, I could take this whole slide to list many more areas, are really relevant in this space and ultimately support a sustainable initiative. Coming in with a commitment to a green schoolyards or early childhood strategy would make a team a really strong fit for this TA, since that's what we're focusing on. And then, of course, enthusiasm to learn, share expertise, and leverage the technical assistance and peer learning activities is really important. This is convening a space, and it's really, the richness of the space really depends a lot on those of you who come into it and bring all of that energy and expertise with you. Now I'm going to, we're going to spend a little more time drilling down in a little more detail about the two strategies in particular around early childhood nature connection. And so our colleague Vera Feeney at the National League of Cities is going to be on deck to talk about that.
Yes, thanks, Priya. And I'll talk a little bit about the early childhood nature connection strategy track. And we have a few slides on that. And the first thing I'll show is a infographic. So as in 2021, as part of our precursor initiative called Cities Connecting Children to Nature, we released an early childhood nature connection toolkit. The link has been added to the chat. And as part of this toolkit, the Children in Nature Network's research team conducted a literature search and prepared an annotated bibliography on the benefits of early childhood nature connection. And providing young children, so we looked at ages 0 to 5, with regular access to nature improves physical and mental health, develops social emotional skills, and better prepares children for school. And investment in early childhood nature connection supports a variety of government priorities, including school readiness, health and wellness, climate resilience, and community development. And on the toolkit page, you can download the full one-pager infographic, And it includes more information on what are really these nature experiences during early childhood and more information on the nature benefits. And you can also download the complete annotated bibliography of the research studies. And so as part of the toolkit too, we conducted, or the toolkit was based on a national landscape scan that really suggests the ways that communities can equitably enhance local nature connections for young children in the places they spend time. So there's the next slide, please. And so there are 4 different pathways, and each pathway has a resource in the toolkit too. But really, so the first pathway that we have is the nature play spaces in parks and public spaces. And so this is enhancing parks and other spaces with natural elements such as boulders, logs, and paths that really encourage hands-on, unstructured nature play. And second, there's nature additions to early childhood programs, and you may have also heard them referred to as outdoor learning environments. So this is adding nature to the outdoor spaces of early childhood programs, ranging from centers and preschools to family childcare homes and family friend and neighbor care. And third, I think you all might be more familiar with some of the nature-based programming, but we really encourage ways to connect with new partners, such as libraries and rec centers, and reach young children who may have less access to nature. And lastly, there are nature preschools, and particularly those with ties to cities or other government entities. But nature preschools use outdoor learning strategies to teach content across a wide range of curriculum. So we heard examples too of ways that cities have them, nature preschools through nature centers, or there are partnerships between city parks and private nature preschools who then use city land and city and county land. But yeah, there's in each pathway there's there are case examples on the resource. But also additional efforts that support equitable early childhood nature connection can cut across multiple pathways. So these include aligning state childcare licensing requirements and quality rating and improvement systems to really incentivize or allow for more outdoor time or more natural elements in licensed childcare. The professional development for staff of early childhood programs, as well as other programs that reach young children, and also engaging families and caregivers to support for more early childhood nature connection. And I'm going to go over a little bit of what one of our communities has done to really focus on creating community-wide initiative. And so we encourage really the Nature Everywhere communities, who will be accelerator communities, to not just create one form of programming or one pathway, but really create have a combination of pathways and cross-cutting areas that really focus on changing the systems that are leading to inequitable nature connection opportunities for young children. So, and one city and community we've worked with, and they've been at this since I think at least 2015. But in San Francisco, they have a citywide collaborative that's composed of over 30 city agencies and community partners. And they also have a director who helps coordinate this work across partners. But for their early childhood nature connection work, they have multiple pathways, so nature-based programming, outdoor learning environments, and nature play, and also professional development opportunities. But they've really taken a data-driven approach and focused on equity. So they make investments in the infrastructure in areas with less access to quality parks and green spaces, and also focus on reaching and activating the parks activating parks in reaching the children who live in these areas and also attend school in these areas. And I'll go over a little bit about one of their pathways, and that is going to be their outdoor learning environments. So they focused on adding nature to the outdoor spaces of private early childhood facilities. And since the launch of this program in 2021, they've revitalized 21 outdoor play spaces across the city. And this has been a partnership between the Department of Early Childhood, the Low Income Investment Fund, who's a funder in a community development funding institution, and also worked with the San Francisco Recreation and Parks Department, San Francisco Children in Nature, and other partners. But so in this, you can see one of their transformations. But some with the resilience ties, these are some examples of the improvements they've done across the facilities. So they've added native plants and gardens to provide opportunities for to experience nature and attract pollinators. They've added 40 trees for essential shade and enhanced air quality, and added logs and stumps for climbing and balancing, as you can see in the photo. And some of these have been even reused from their local parks. And they've added natural loose parts for creative and imaginative play, and created also mud kitchens, sand and gravel pits, creeks, and bug hotels, and more. And in their program, administrators and educators are invited, and you're not required to join. But the designs are developed with the educators and administrators to support educational goals and sustain outdoor learning opportunities over time. And the Low Income Investment Fund has provides 1 year of professional development and the technical assistance for all the teachers on best practices in nature-based early childhood education to support comfort in outdoor learning. And lastly, I'll go over a little bit of some of the key partners in this work. So successful early childhood nature connection initiatives require strong and diverse partnerships. And these are just some examples of potential partners. So varying from local government agencies such as Parks and Rec, Planning, Sustainability, Resilience, Public Health, and Early Childhood, the early childhood professionals. We're also hearing some examples of healthcare systems, including pediatricians, community and faith-based organizations, and school districts, and universities, and of course, families and caregivers. And some examples of additional examples are of ways that partners can work together, are to advance policies, invest in infrastructure, and really allocate the resources to reach the children who are less likely to attend existing nature preschools or live near high quality parks and green spaces. And so this can look different in different communities and depend on what pathways you're really focused on. But I think some keys are to really try to encourage innovative partnerships and focus on systems change and kind of move beyond like individual programming and pilots. And I will turn it over to Priya.
Thanks, Vera. And for those listening, I think it might have been mentioned at the beginning, but I know we're doing a lot of presentation of information now, and we're really excited to get to the Q&A at the end. So I get to share a little bit more with you about green schoolyards, and then we'll have a chance to talk about the application process and then have some good Q&A. So I'll jump in here. This picture shows, this is from Chicago Public Schools, and unfortunately shows the state of many schoolyards today, which is they're often a large sea of asphalt. And what that presents to communities is usually an insufficient play area and not one that necessarily encourages, moderate or vigorous physical activity. It doesn't provide an enriching space for learning or motivate kids to come to school. And it can exacerbate a lot of the resilience issues that we were talking about before. So things like extreme heat, which also increases indoor cooling costs, It can contribute to flooding and the inability to use the space for periods of time. There's a lot of costs associated with the asphalt repair and snow plowing and things like that. So it's a little bit underperforming in that way. But these spaces have much more potential. And in this next slide, you'll see a photograph of the same space. I won't read everything on this slide, but it details some of the things that happen when we can replace a schoolyard like the previous photo with a green schoolyard. This after picture has some hidden gray infrastructure underneath the surface there, and also a lot of green infrastructure that is supporting stormwater capture. There's an outdoor classroom, age-appropriate playgrounds, edible and pollinator gardens, trees that are small post-planting but will provide some canopy and shade, and areas for physical activity. From a resilience standpoint, this is helping to reduce extreme heat, improve air quality, improve access to fresh, nutritious produce, and more pollinator and wildlife habitat. There was also a recent report that our organization commissioned that looked at the economic value of a lot of these benefits that green schoolyards can provide, and a really strong case that, for roughly $1 of investment, that the economic value easily in the district study, which was actually Denver Public Schools, came out to roughly $3 of economic value and impact for society. So all of these benefits on their own are really important to us, but then there's also an economic impact of that they have on our communities. The way that Children in Nature Network defines a green schoolyard is as a nature-filled, multifunctional school ground that's designed for and by students, teachers, parents, and community members. AJ, you can pop to the next slide for this. And those spaces offer play affordance and spaces for learning, exploration, and growth. And out of school time, those green schoolyards are open for community use, which helps them to serve as parks and improving the health and well-being of the whole community. They can include some of the features listed, but that's not an exhaustive list. Another really important piece to mention around the way Children in Nature Network and Nature Everywhere approach green schoolyards is through, this is a little bit like our mantra. We say equity-based, district-wide open access. And I talked a little bit about the open access piece already, that when there are so many benefits to be experienced from those spaces, those can be multiplied by ensuring that community members, we can stay back on the other slide. Thanks. That community members have access to those. So addressing things like park equity is possible when you have the space open to the surrounding neighborhood. Equity-based and district-wide are also really important facets of the green schoolyards technical assistance we provide and the goals we have for green schoolyards. There's many cases where there are individual champions, school leaders who manage to create beautiful and beneficial spaces on their campuses. And often the sustainability of that rests on the shoulders of one or two people. And it's really hard to find sustainable funding and policy alignment that way. And so our work is really focused on a system level approach. And that means looking across the whole district and making sure that the benefits can be felt across all communities and in all neighborhoods, and acting according to where the needs are greatest, where, for example, there might be the most stormwater flooding happening, or where in some cases there's extreme heat where some neighborhoods are 20 degrees hotter than others, and using factors like that to make sure that policies and funding can be targeted where they're most needed. In the end, that makes for a more sustainable program as well. So on to that next slide, where we get to look a little bit at the benefits of green schoolyards. This wheel, I hope it's large enough for you all to read, but it really documents the research on the benefits of green schoolyards that span community, health and wellness, learning, and environment. I've talked about some of those things already, but this really is maybe the graphic we use the most in our work to help bring new partners and cross-sector conversation to the table. And so it may be that you have people on your team who come to a green schoolyard strategy because they're really focused on the mental health of children. And it could be that someone else is at the table because they are implementing green stormwater solutions and they want to do it in a place where it'll have maximum impact. And so there's a lot of reasons to come together and a really great opportunity to bring people together across different sectors and agencies. Now I'm going to switch gears and just give you a quick national tour of some of the Green Schoolyards programs that are out there. There are many, and just hopefully give you a little inspiration for what's possible. The first one I'll mention is actually the Boston Schoolyard Initiative. And if I'm remembering correctly, I think we have some colleagues here on the line from Boston, which is terrific. Boston Schoolyard Initiative transformed 88 elementary schoolyards in Boston over 18 years. AJ, you can go ahead, go forward one more slide. Thank you. Together with the city of Boston, this public-private partnership invested more than $20 million to schoolyards and education programs. And this was an interesting initiative. It really existed for the period of transformation. So this is just one of those campuses that you can see. Moving across to the West Coast into San Francisco, the organization Education Outside brought hands-on experiential science and environmental education to every single San Francisco Unified School District public elementary school student as part of their regular school day throughout the school year. So from the period of 2001 to 2011, the school district secured nearly $14 million in city bond funding to design and construct green schoolyards at 84 public schools in their district. The next example I'll highlight is a rural example from Northeast California. And Learning Landscapes, there's several organizations in this field called Learning Landscapes. So this is one located in that region. And it serves the Upper Feather River watershed, which includes 18 schools across several different districts and across 3 different counties as well, and serves around 3,000 school children annually. So this is a rural program, and it took advantage of preserved adjacent property and developed school grounds with trails, outdoor classroom areas, and native plantings. And it supports using these spaces as an extension of the classroom. Right after that one, I am going to talk about a different Learning Landscapes program. This one comes from Denver, where in 2003, starting in 2003, and in less than 15 years, Learning Landscapes transformed all 96 elementary school campuses in the Denver public schools using a variety of funding sources that included community development block grant funds and municipal bonds. And they really focused on a participatory landscape and design process too that supported outdoor learning with academic and physical education and socialization tools for school-age kids. And again, this is the program, and the Denver Public Schools data was the data featured in that economic benefits analysis I mentioned previously. The last example I will just mention briefly comes from Chicago, where the Space to Grow initiative, as a partnership between the Metropolitan Sewer District, the City of Chicago Parks, the school district, the Healthy Schools Campaign, and many other community partners, work to transform schoolyards into vibrant spaces to play, learn, and be outside. And these are 3 of their priorities of their program, which are health and wellness, outdoor learning, and stormwater management. They have transformed over 30 schools and are right now launching into the next big round of transformations. When we work with communities on launching green schoolyards initiatives or deepening ones that they might have already begun, this is roughly the process map that we follow. And one of the key, maybe primary things that should be on here but isn't, and I'll name, is really starting with a collectively developed vision so that all the partners involved and the community members who are helping to co-create that vision can see themselves, their work, their priorities aligned in what their own Green Schoolyard program is going to tackle. And I won't read the whole slide to you, but just know that this is the process roughly that we would support teams in achieving so that they end up with a sustainable program. The kinds of partners who often are at the table and make for a really strong Green Schoolyards initiative. Many of them are listed here. Again, it's not exhaustive, but many of the examples I just shared with you featured some of these folks, leaders from water utilities, park agencies, mayor's offices, community organizations, transportation. Well, I guess I am reading it now. But as you can see, lots of different sectors and institutions. And so we really encourage you, as you're thinking about what you might want to do, to think about if there's folks missing from this list who you might initiate conversations with, might invite to the table. And again, just to collect the list, I mentioned some of these things earlier, but because we're really trying to support you all in systems change, these funding and policy levers are critical for creating sustainable initiatives that can outlast just individual champions or pilot projects. And so these are examples of mechanisms that communities have used to ensure that there's sustainability, to ensure that they can implement a program at scale, and that they can kind of fundamentally shift the way resources and relationships and dynamics function to support their work.
Thank you so much, Priya and Vera, for your expertise in walking us through a look at what green schoolyards and early childhood can look like as we talk about nature everywhere. I'm going to share a little bit about our application process. I encourage you, some people have done this already, to drop some questions in the chat. We'll have Q&A in just a couple of minutes, and I know a couple have already been dropped in. So if you've got a burning question, feel free to drop it there, and hopefully I'll also be able to answer your questions about the application process along the way. So the first step of our application process you are in right now, which is our information session. This is being recorded and will be made available to registered participants. So if you have colleagues who were unable to join us today, this will be made available, and it will also be on the website so that it can be shared with additional colleagues if you've gotten great ideas about who you might be able to invite to join your team. The next step will be submitting an interest form. Interest forms are open now through Wednesday next week. So we have a little bit of a tight timeline here. We ask that the team lead submit one interest form for your team. So that means that each one of you, if there are 4 or 5 of you on this call right now from one community, you're selecting one person who will submit on behalf of the whole group so that we're being succinct. And the link to that form is in the chat, and we'll make it available for you in follow-up materials. The next step is that eligible teams will schedule and attend a call with our technical assistance staff. We have appointments available as early as Monday this coming week. We'll be meeting from the 19th to the 23rd. These are a chance for you to ask really specific questions that are about your community, for us to share a little bit more and get a sense of whether you are on track towards being a good candidate. So part of that, the step 4 process is that teams who meet our RFA criteria will be invited to apply. The application invitation notifications will go out on August 27th. And then you will have a 2-week window to compile your application and submit. So applications will be due September 6th. All members of your team, we ask that all members of the team that are being submitted on the application attend our Vision Lab. So just putting that as a note that that's an expectation that we have for your team. Some important dates for consideration. Some of these I've already covered with our steps, but I wanted to highlight September 25th is when teams will be notified of your acceptance. By September 25th, it could be a little bit earlier than that. And we're asking that you then register and book your travel for the Vision Lab by September 27th. The Vision Lab itself is in Milwaukee, October 28th through 30th, in Wisconsin. attendance is required, and this is at no cost to your community. So costs covered by the Nature Everywhere initiative for the teams that have been accepted. So I'm now going to, we're going to shift into our Q&A for today. And I know that we've had some questions dropped into the chat. So I'm going to start with a question from Jared asking how many communities will be welcomed as accelerator communities to this cycle. I'm going to go ahead and answer that. So Jared, we're estimating 6 to 8 communities. Priority will be ensuring alignment with our technical assistance programming with green schoolyards and early childhood. There was a follow-up question from Clara. How soon would a next round open? And I can also answer this one, which is that we are anticipating a play equity focused cohort sometime in the spring of 2025. So if you are really here thinking about play equity, that would be a good option for you. We have another question. Are you expecting applicants for your cohort to have one of these initiatives already in motion? Priya, would you like to answer that one?
Sure. The expectation is not that you already have an initiative underway. I would say that there is maybe a small piece that's in motion, which is that you would want to have, a strong team engaged, have good partners involved in conversation, and have commitment from that team to be really advancing this work. And part of that does include support of the, organizational leaders. So if you're at the city, your agency department leads, your mayor's office, if you're at the school district, your superintendent. So that's really important. So I would say that there are some steps involved there, and that does take some conversation and, building understanding and enthusiasm and commitment. But certainly not that there's not an expectation that you would have, already planned or built a site or anything like that.
May I ask a question? I just wrote it, but good afternoon, Cynthia Gutierrez, City of FAR Public Health. Hi, Priya. Nice to see you again. Quick question. If we are recipients of a grant for forestry, it's a schoolyard forestry grant, are we disqualified? We're working on partnerships right now. And sorry, I hadn't noticed that it was closed. So are we disqualified from applying for this? I know that another member that's here with me from our team went to see the schoolyards, and it was amazing, but we don't have anybody from the school district that went. So does that disqualify us?
So I think there's 2 questions there, Cynthia. I'm happy to take that one. So no, there's not. Your eligibility does not depend on what forestry or other federal grants you may or may not have, but all the teams who participate should expect that scanning what federal funding sources you do have that can support this work will absolutely be part of our work together and something we want to support you with. So it's less about what you have and don't have already in hand, and more about going through that process of making sure that whatever assets you do have in terms of grants, in terms of policies and partnerships, that we're taking all that into consideration and helping you build a good strategic action plan.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
And then the school district part, I know that in your case, I know there's a whole regional investment that's happening, and you're not necessarily at the level of a unit of a single city and district, for example. And so we know that there's cases like that might arise. I know there's another question in the chat about state level interest. And so I'd say the really key thing is that this initiative is looking to partner with all of you around systems change effort. And it might be that some of our language or the way we've spelled it out, even in this presentation, does not perfectly fit. But my advice is that if you're interested in a systems change effort that would really transform, the way a whole community is approaching something, then we're interested in talking to you, and we really encourage you to submit an interest form, say who you have committed. If you have gaps and you have gaps of who's there, and you'll know you need to engage them, we encourage you to do that again, because it's a tight timeline, but don't let that stop you from talking with us and telling us more about your particular interest.
Okay, thank you so much, Priya.
Hi, Marisa, I see you have your hand raised if you'd like to ask your question.
Hi. So we have, I don't know if you can see, hi everyone. So we have several RGV region folks on this call. So thank you guys for being here. Just so that I think I've shared it before, but just so we're clear, TCIN has been approached to lead a regional collaboration, and so that is our plan right now, where TCIN would be writing the application for our region, and we'll pull all the teams, so McAllen, FAR, and all the other teams together. However, if there is interest in doing something differently, for sure, let's talk about it among our region, so we can, if, like, for example, City of McAllen, City of FAR wants to do something on their own, we definitely should discuss it and make the best plan moving forward. But I just want to let you know that that's currently the plan, but of course everything can be modified.
Thank you for letting us know, because we did not know of any plans. We were not part of that conversation.
Okay, I can talk to you more, Cynthia.
Thanks, Marisa. I see a question that came up in the chat asking about how many people should be on your team. Would one of you like to answer that, or would you like me to take the lead? Me, perfect. So we are asking that teams have 5 people in your team. We have some recommendations around what a good local leadership team can look like. So we're recommending a mix of institutional representatives as well as essential community partners who are poised to really help advance your initiative. If you're here thinking about green schoolyards or early childhood specifically, or if you have a sustainability coordinator or someone who has expertise in climate resiliency, those would be excellent partners to have on your team. So a 5-person local leadership team is our recommendation, and that's who we would be covering the cost of to attend the Vision Lab in Milwaukee. Question, what if all members of your team cannot attend the Vision Lab? I am going to say that I think a requirement that we have is that all or most of your team members need to attend. So if it seems that less than half are available, this may not be the right fit right now. Our recommendation, we're really looking to have team commitment, and that Vision Lab is a key step in terms of laying the foundation for what this partnership will look like. Building some momentum and bonding with your team and really working towards setting a vision for the work. And so it's really critical that that all of your team be there. And I would say if one person is unavailable, we're not going to say no, you can't attend, but we really are asking that this be a priority for your team members. I see a question about, with such a tight window, can you schedule the 30-minute interview prior to submitting the letter of interest? We're using the letter of interest as notification to schedule those calls. So if you are genuinely interested but are looking for that one-on-one time, then I would say please email our Nature Everywhere email address, which we can drop into the chat so that we can schedule that separately, because otherwise we wouldn't get the notification from the interest form from your team. So I think that's something we would consider on a case-by-case basis if it feels like that's the right fit for you. The interest form is meant to be a relatively light touch, not a super heavy lift, but an opportunity for us to get a sense of your commitment. And if you're really feeling like you need more information, I think we can work with that.
it wasn't necessarily more information. It was just we needed to the first time we're going to be able to get everybody together in the same room to review prior to submitting the interest form is next week, Tuesday.
Okay.
And with a due on Wednesday and then Thursday, Friday being the only other 2 days for 30-minute sit down, I was hoping we might be able to start getting people's calendars holding times sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and Jared, that makes a lot of sense. We have time slots for the end of the week. So if it feels like meeting when you have it scheduled and you need if you need a little bit of leeway in getting it submitted, I think we can be flexible. And if you would prefer to go ahead and get it scheduled so it's on the calendar, we can do that as well.
Okay, beautiful. I'll reach out.
Thanks. I think this question might have been answered, but I'm going to read it just to make sure that the person who asked it feels that they have clarification. The question was, can the state apply in partnership with a couple of cities? I do think Priya addressed this a little bit with some other examples, but want to make sure that our colleague in the chat from Minnesota feels that this has been answered for you.
Yeah, and I'll pile on, and I think it's another Anne who asked the question, if I'm not mistaken. And you can also, and from Minnesota, you may also come off mute if this doesn't get to it. But I think what we'd want to make sure is that the kind of support you're after and the technical assistance that we're offering is a great fit. So that's just our number one priority. But if what you're thinking about is a concerted systems change effort, and it sounds like you are looking to think about statewide policy and your Children's Outdoor Bill of Rights. And I know that even Children in Nature Network has been involved in some schoolyard, like a statewide survey in the past. I know there's some good statewide effort there. So we'd really love to talk to you about that. And we're also, really interested in the idea of city-state partnership and how state level action and systems change work can really support the communities in advancing this kind of work. So hopefully that answers your question. And if not, we'd be happy to talk more.
We have a few more minutes for any additional questions. I see one that just dropped into the chat asking if we could share a little bit more about what will happen at the Vision Lab. That's a really great question. Do any of you feel the desire to answer that, or would you like me to?
I can take it if you want, Anne.
Sure, either one.
So certainly we'll be able to share a more defined agenda with you, but I can talk about definitely some of the components that will certainly be part of it. So like Anne said, it's really an opportunity to get inspired and to be together with possibly a newly formed team. And so one of the components will include a site visit. So that could look like anywhere from 1 to 3 different sites that are focused, green schoolyards or early childhood nature play sites where you could see something that's been implemented and not just physically experience it, but also talk to the partners and the local leaders about their partnerships and their funding and policies that made that work possible. It's nice to actually step foot on one. Since that's what we're focusing on. And then usually we have some like softer periods for, there's meal times, there's times to connect socially, again, with your team. It's a good opportunity, I think, to pull yourself out of the day-to-day and get to know your team members better, their work better, and hopefully set you on a path for, gelling and some good momentum when you get back home. The other content in the program involves talking about just the high level process, so what to expect in more detail out of the technical assistance. That'll likely mean, a separate kind of track or breakout groups for both the early childhood group and the green schoolyards group. And we always want to make sure there's time for team reflection and action planning and huddling with your technical assistance lead staff members from our team, so that you can even set up things like, when your calls are going to be, but also what are your next steps and what are the big questions or goals that you have coming into the experience. So it's a mix of things, and hopefully I'm conveying why we want the whole team to be present for it so they don't miss out.
All right, I think we have time for one more question if someone wants to come off of mute and ask. And if not, AJ, I'll ask you to show our closing slide. And I just want to say thank you to Priya, Vera, and Bridget, our climate resiliency subject matter expert who has joined us today, for your time today, sharing what Nature Everywhere looks like with our audience. Thank you to everyone who joined for your participation, your great questions and comments. In terms of an announcement, the interest form is now open through August 21st with our technical assistance team meetings being scheduled next week from the 19th to the 23rd. We'll be emailing a link to this recording to everyone once it's available so that you can revisit the conversation or share it with others on your team. Thank you again for your participation today. And we are looking forward to getting to know and work with many of you. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. I hope you get a chance to get outside and enjoy the weather.